afternoon on this Monday, February 3rd. I'm Yumna Naufal and these are today's headlines. Special tribunal continues with a retired member of the Internal Security Forces testifying via video conference from Beirut. A man critically wounded in the January 16 bombing in the northeastern town of Hermel is pronounced dead, raising the death toll in the attack to 6. And Syrian government forces bomb Aleppo's Hanano district with barrel bombs for a third day, with scores of people killed over the 72-hour period. The Special Tribunal for Lebanon resumes hearing the testimony of witnesses in former Premier Rafiq Hariri's February 2005 assassination in a massive bombing that targeted his convoy in Beirut. A retired member of the Internal Security Forces, Abdul Badi al-Susi, testified via video conference from Beirut. The court in 2011 issued arrest warrants against Mustafa Badruddin, 52, Salim Ayyash, age 50, Hussein Onaisi, 39, and Asad Sabra, who is 37, all members of Hezbollah. The 4 suspects were indicted in 2011 with plotting the attack but have not been arrested yet. A 5th, Hassan Habib Minhi, was charged late last year in the case and is also still at large. Brigadier General al-Susi, who was the head of the Explosive Bureau and whose role was administrative, said he was not asked to go to the site of the explosion on Beirut seafront where Hariri was assassinated on February 14, 2005, but he attended a meeting at the military court called for by the military examining magistrate that afternoon. Prime Minister-designate Tamam Salam is looking set to announce early this week an all-embracing cabinet after MP Michel Aoun's rejection of his 11th hour offer to reserve 2 key ministerial portfolios to the Free Patriotic Movement in exchange for abandoning the Energy Ministry. Salam presented Aoun with a take-it-or-leave-it offer, proposing in addition to the Foreign Affairs Ministry, the Education or Public Works Ministry be allotted to the FPM in exchange for Aoun giving up the energy portfolio. Now, a national unity cabinet based on an 888 lineup is deemed crucial to cope with a deteriorating security situation in Lebanon. If Salam does go ahead with forming an all-embracing political government based on the lineup without the approval of Aoun, the risks the possibility of the FPM leader withdrawing his ministers from the cabinet. With the Lebanese forces' decision not to join the all-embracing cabinet with Hezbollah, an FPM walkout would present a problem for Christian representation, even though the Kataib party said it would participate. It also risks it failing to gain a vote of confidence from Parliament. A man critically wounded in the January 16 bombing in the northeastern town of Hermel died this morning, raising the death toll in the attack to 6, according to security sources. Muhammad Isa al-Hit died from severe wounds he sustained in the explosion that ripped through a government building in Hermel. The blast wounded more than 40. The Nusra Front in Lebanon claimed responsibility for the bombing. The group said the attack was in retaliation for Hezbollah's military involvement in Syria on the side of President Bashar al-Assad. The group took credit for a similar bombing that targeted a gas situation in Hermel on Saturday. Now, the southern suburbs of Beirut, where Hezbollah enjoys broad support, has also been the target of several car bombings in recent months. Haig's funeral procession will be held this afternoon. Traffic came to a standstill this morning at Beirut's entrances and several other areas during the morning rush hour after the owners of trucks held a strike to protest the strict schedule imposed on them. The head of the syndicate of owners and drivers of trucks, Shafiq El-Kassis, said that the strike is peaceful and only aims at changing the schedule of the trucks. Security forces asked the drivers to park the trucks on one lane to the east of the traffic, but the owners suspended their strike upon the request of caretaker Interior Minister Marwan Sharbil. They announced on Friday that they would hold the strike until 11 a.m. in the areas of Dawra, Saufar, Awza'i, Shwaifat, and Al-Awali Bridge. They said the last decision made by the authorities was to stop all Lebanese trucks from transporting goods between 6 in the morning and 9 and between 4 and 7 p.m. this afternoon. District with barrel bombs for a third day, with scores of people killed over this 72-hour period, according to monitor groups and sources. The latest attack in the country's second city killed 16. Unverified activist footage showed children were among those wounded in the attack. The bombing adds to a toll of more than 120 people killed in similar attacks over the previous 2 days, as reported by the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Barrel bombs have killed more than 700 people in Syria in the past 6 weeks. Their use has been denounced as indiscriminate, not least by Western powers. Least weeks past talks in Switzerland, a reported 21 people were killed, including 13 children, according to the observatory. Another 15 died in air raids and barrel bomb attacks in other areas. And the observatory is reporting 85 deaths to similar attacks on the city just on Saturday. A series of attacks in and around Baghdad in Iraq, including a spate of car bombs, killed also 16 people as Iraqi forces press an assault against militant-held areas of Anbar province. The latest bloodshed comes amid a surge in violence that left more than 1,000 people dead last month, the worst such figure in nearly 6 years, as security forces grapple with nearly daily attacks and protracted battles with anti-government fighters. Foreign leaders have urged the Shia-led government to do more to reach out to the disaffected Sunni Arab minority in a bid to undercut support for militants. But with parliamentary polls looming in less than 3 months, Iraqi Premier Nouri al-Maliki has taken a hard line. Despite officials insisting operations against militants, including those affiliated with the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant jihadist group, are having an impact, the bloodshed has continued unabated. Coming up next, we look back at some highlights of the career of actor Philip Seymour Hoffman after his passing. Stay with us. Welcome back. 3 large explosions have been heard in Yemen's capital Sana'a, close to the defense ministry, the central bank, and the former president's home. The news agency said the third explosion occurred near the house of the former president Ali Abdullah Saleh. Security vehicles immediately raced to the third side of the blasts and blocked all access to the area, while an ambulance transported 4 people injured on site. The witnesses told Reuters that the blast near Saleh's home appears to have been caused by an implanted explosive device in the area. They also said there was no immediate word on the total number of casualties or the cause of the blasts. Yemen has been in turmoil since mass protests in 2011 forced long-serving Saleh to step down. In December last year, a suicide bomb and gun attack near the defense ministry killed 52 people. Ukraine's President Viktor Yanukovych has returned from 4 days of sick leave to expected opposition calls for him to resign as thousands of protesters remain on the streets across the country. Yanukovych, who returned to office on Monday after recovering from what officials said was an acute respiratory infection, has to choose between making further concession to the pro-EU protest movement, which pitted Russia against the EU and the U.S. Following talks with top Western officials, including U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and EU Foreign Affairs head Catherine Ashton in Munich over the weekend, opposition leaders, including Vitaly Klitschko, have urged the West to mediate in talks with Yanukovych. Convening tens of thousands for a new rally at Kiev's barricaded tent city on Independence Square amid freezing temperatures on Sunday, the protest leaders also requested real financial aid. And we go on to Moscow, where an armed student briefly took 20 teenagers hostage in a school and killed a policeman and a teacher before being detained amid security jitters ahead of the Sochi Winter Olympic Games. Police said a student armed with a gun forced a security guard to lead him to a specific classroom in the school on the northern outskirts of Moscow, and then locked himself inside with about 20 teenage pupils and the class teacher. He then opened fire through a window at scores of police who had rushed to the scene. Security officials said the student made no demands and did not conduct negotiations with officials during the broad daylight raid. The Russian Interior Ministry said the hostage taker had been detained during a police raid on the school and that all the students were now safe and unharmed. Police said the hostage taker was one of the school's upper-class students, but did not release his name. Now, schools in Russia usually house children from first grade to the 11th. And protesters in Thailand have vowed to stage larger rallies in central Bangkok and push ahead their efforts to nullify the results of elections held over the weekend, despite disruption and protests. According to the National Election Commission, the voter turnout on Sunday was at least 46%. Despite fears of violence, voting proceeded peacefully in 90% of polling stations that were able to open. Protesters had forced polling booths to close in Bangkok and southern Thailand, disenfranchising registered voters. As a result, not all parliament seats will be filled, and a series of by-elections are required to complete voting, extending political paralysis for months. After disrupting voting, protesters said they would fight the result on several grounds, including that it is required by law to be held on one day. The opposition Democrat Party, which backs the protesters and boycotted the vote, said that it was studying other legal justifications to invalidate the election. The Family and friends of actor Philip Seymour Hoffman expressed shock and sadness after he was found dead on Sunday of an apparent drug overdose at his apartment in Greenwich Village. Hoffman's body was discovered by a friend around 11:30 in the morning in the fourth-floor apartment at 35 Bethune Street, which he rented as an office. The friend, David Parkatz, had grown worried when he was unable to contact Hoffman. Investigators found a syringe in his left forearm, at least 2 plastic envelopes with what appeared to be heroin nearby, and 5 empty plastic envelopes in a trash bin. Hoffman was long known to struggle with a drug addiction. Last year, he checked into a rehabilitation program for about 10 days after his dependence on prescription pills resulted in his briefly returning to heroin. He has 3 young children, a son and 2 daughters, with his partner Mimi O'Donnell, a costume designer. The family lived in an apartment on Jane Street, neighbors say, not far from the building where he was found dead.
I think this is going to be a really exciting series for many, many years. People have been watching these films for a long time, just like reading the books. Very, very good.
Hello, my name is Truman Capote. I was in Marilyn's apartment just last week. The 4 Matisses hang on her wall. 2 are upside down. Kansas Bureau of Investigation, KBI. But we're not looking for any.
I didn't really know what was fascinating about his life that I would, be interested in. And so when I read the script, I started to see what it was, and then I read the biography and became semi-obsessed, with the whole idea of the story. And that's really, how I keyed in.
You're right, we never got to raise an insanity plea. You wrote how terrible the lawyers was.
I haven't written a word yet.
What have you been doing?
Research. Talking to you.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Special tribunal continues with a retired member of the Internal Security Forces testifying via video conference from Beirut. A man critically wounded in the January 16 bombing in the northeastern town of Hermel is pronounced dead, raising the death toll in the attack to 6. And Syrian government forces attack Aleppo's Hanana district with barrel bombs for a 3rd day, with scores of people killed over the 72-hour period. Those are your headlines live on this Monday in Beirut. I'm Yumna Naufal, wishing you all a good week ahead.
مرتزقة الإرهاب الدولي الذين استخدمهم الأسد وعلى رأسهم إرهابيو حزب الله.